I'm joined now by the West Australian Premier from Perth, Colin Barnett. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, Chris.
Do you have legal advice that suggests this tax could fail in the High Court?
There's a chance that it could fail if there is a High Court challenge undertaken by the mining industry. If there is a challenge, then the West Australian Government will intervene. In other words, we will appear and present a West Australian Government point of view.
So you have strong advice, though, that it could fail, otherwise you wouldn't be wasting West Australian taxpayers' dollars, would you?
That's correct. There is some constitutional doubts about this tax.
On what grounds?
Oh, well, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but the tax is flawed in many ways. It's discriminatory. It taxes essentially Western Australia and Queensland. 65% of the revenue of the tax will actually come out of Western Australia. It discriminates between different minerals, and the Commonwealth is effectively taxing the natural resource, whether it be coal or iron ore. And despite what Wayne Swan and Julia Gillard may claim, constitutionally, those natural resources belong to the states, not the Commonwealth.
But the Western Australian people and the people in Queensland in the past have benefited from the wealth in the east when wealth has flowed from east to west, and throughout the bulk of your life that would have been the case, wouldn't it?
Yes, but that's a different issue. You're talking about the distribution of tax sharing arrangements, which was originally company and income tax and then replaced by the GST. And if you want to raise that issue, Chris, I mean, there's a lot of anger in Western Australia because most people would think they would get 100 cents in the dollar back on GST. The big states, New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland, all get back in excess of 90 cents in the dollar. Western Australia, for the coming financial year, will get 55 cents in the dollar back. So the wealth of this state is grossly being redistributed, and yet this is the growing state. It's the state that provides the bulk of Australia's exports, the bulk of Australia's growing national income, and people in their thousands are flocking to Western Australia. So we need more health, more education and the like. And that's why people in Western Australia are extremely angry.
But certainly, Premier, people have known that businesses have known that this tax is coming for a long time. And when we look at what's happened with mining investment, it's gone from $47 billion in 2010-11 to $95 billion this year and expected $120 billion in 12-13. So businesses have not been put off by the thought that there'll be an increase in taxation.
No, but watch this space, Chris. All of those investment decisions would have been made several years back. Any major mining project probably has a 5 to 10 year gestation period. And this tax has damaged Australia's international reputation. For the first time in my career, I've heard business people overseas, governments overseas, talk in terms of political risk and sovereign risk. This has damaged Australia's reputation, and therefore we bear the burden of that also in the mining states of Western Australia and Queensland.
But surely if lifting taxation is going to be a problem for the industry, then your lifting of royalties is a problem for them as well.
Royalties are fairly modest, and the royalty is the price at which we, the state, sell the minerals. It's not a tax, it's a selling price, and it's based on production and the value of that production. So it does pick up higher prices. But look, the point is that the Commonwealth has never made a case, in my view, to increase taxation of mining companies. But even putting that to one side, if they genuinely believe that mining companies should pay more tax, surely the simple measure would have been to put a surcharge on company tax. And bear in mind, the vast amount of the revenue from the mining industry, company tax, income tax collections, flows to the Commonwealth Government, not to the state government.
But isn't it a reasonable argument to make that when prices rise as dramatically as we've seen them in the last few years, that the state should pick up that rise in prices, and the Commonwealth's trying to do that?
Well, it's trying to do it for its own benefit, and it also is seeking to gain control, because remember, the original proposal of this, Chris, was that the states actually exit the whole area of revenue collection from the mining industry. So you find the Commonwealth saying now, somewhat paradoxically, we, the Commonwealth, are going to increase taxation on the mining industry, but by the way, the states that actually own the minerals can't increase prices for which they sell it. I mean, this is totally inconsistent, and this whole proposal has been backed on a series of half-truths and misrepresentations to the Australian people. And look, I think some people in the mining industry might say at times of high prices, higher taxes can be paid. Well, if that's the case, why didn't the Commonwealth simply use the company tax regime? They didn't because they wanted to gain a control over the wider mining industry. Because let's face it, it's the one industry in Australia that's going well, and I wish the Prime Minister and Wayne Swan would actually give some of their attention to the industries that are struggling. That's what Australians want.
And finally, and just briefly, do you believe that this tax will raise the $10.6 billion that the Commonwealth says that it will raise?
I think it'll struggle because prices are very high at the moment. There is no doubt that iron ore prices and perhaps coal prices will ease over the coming years. And there's a lot of investment taking place at the moment in the mining industry. But people now considering future projects 4 or 5 years away, they will be taking into account the risk attached to this tax. And bear in mind, you've also got Bob Brown and others saying, well, it should apply to gold, it should apply to rare earths, it should apply to uranium. So all sectors in the mining industry see now a greater level of political risk coming out of Canberra, and that will affect the industry in a negative way.
Colin Barnett, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.